everybody, a quick note about testing. In Intro Java, it might have been your regular practice to complete the code for an assignment and kind of look it over, and if it looks okay, you submit it. It is very unusual for code that you write to work the first time. And as you become a more professional programmer, it's going to be very important that you test your own code and resolve as many issues as you're able to on your own before submitting it. If you're doing something like this is a great method as far as I can see, but there's no main, there's no way to test it. So let's go through how you would actually construct something to test it. So public static void main. I need to make an input that I can use where I know what the output is supposed to be, and then I'll run the method and verify that the output is what I expect it to be. So let's do that. So here I'll say array list of integer nums equals new array list. And I'll just have, well, let's do this. So let's construct one on purpose. So I'm doing something that there's a shorter way to do it, which I'll show you in just a second. So now let's display duplicate neighbor nums. So right now I've got 3 values, none of them are duplicate, so I believe that this should display false when I run it. Let's run it and verify. Okay, so you can't see my console, but it did in fact display false. And then if I want to, let's add a duplicate at the end here, and I'll run it again. And now it should display true, which it does not. So that shows me that there was some kind of problem that happened here. So let's pretend that we don't see what the problem is just by looking at the code, which is the normal situation. In that case, we need some way of actually following what the code is doing step by step so that we can see the steps that lead to the wrong answer. So one way to do this is to use breakpoints in the debugger. We'll work more with that later. A different thing to do is to display values in variables. So what I know is this should have returned true because it has duplicate values, but actually it returned false. So one thing that I could do would be to go to the thing that I know is happening. If it's returning false, I know that it's running this for some reason, but it shouldn't be. So I wonder why is it running that? So I want to display all of the things that are involved in this if statement. So let's break it out into pieces. So names.getI. Names is kind of a weird variable name for this because they're actually numbers, not names. But I'll say value1 is this. And we can actually just make it a regular int. And val2 equals names.getI plus 1. So now I want to look and see what is this thing and what is that thing. So for debugging purposes, I'm going to say val1 is that and val2 is this. And now when I run it, I can watch step by step as it's looping to see what's happening. So let's run it. Okay, I moved over my window here a little bit. So it looks like it only displays once and then exits. But I'm expecting it to check all of the adjacent pairs. So I want it to check 2 and 3, and then 3 and 6, and then 6 and 6. So why is it exiting early? So now I can go back and think about it. Oh, so it's saying if the first 2 elements that I check are not equal, then I'll immediately return false because there are no duplicate neighbors. But I didn't actually check the rest of them. So it's like I exited too early. So now I know how to fix it. I'll say if they are equal, then I can return true because I know it contains duplicate neighbors. Otherwise, I have to keep looping to check the other pairs. So let's comment this. Whoops. So let's comment this out for a minute. And now I can run it again. And now it displays true, which is what I'm expecting it to display. Actually, let's keep the print statements in for the moment so that we can actually see the full process. Yeah, so now it's displaying what I expect. It's comparing 2 and 3, and 3 and 6, and 6 and 6. And now as soon as it compares the 6 and 6, it's returned true. Let me show you 2 other things that might be of interest. So if you wanted to use the debugger, you can click in the margin here, and that adds a red circle. That's called a breakpoint. And then if you hit the green oops, if you hit the debug button, this little bug right next to the play, it will enter what's called debugging mode, which looks like this. It would be really great if I could make my display window larger. Okay, so you can, so it's running the code right now, but it's paused right on this line. And you can see that it's added to the code here, the current values of the variables. So names, it says size is 4 because it's running right now with that input that we've given it. And so these values are going to help us understand what's happening. I can run the program step by step by hitting either this button, step over, or this button, step into. Step into will actually enter a method if we run one, but right now let's just do step over. So I'm going to click step over. So unfortunately, it's not telling us what names.getI and names.getI plus 1 is. It's just telling us what the size is. So in this particular case, running the debugger wouldn't have helped us because it's not displaying enough information. But very often running the debugger will help. You can also explore your variables here. So the names array list, it says size 4, and you can expand it. Whoops. And you can see like element 0 is the value 2 and 1 is value 3 and so on. So it shows you the contents of the list. So we'll work more with the debugger later, but it's often a very useful tool. The last thing I wanted to say is this is a very awkward way to construct our test input. Just imagine if we needed it to be longer, like we'd be wasting so much time writing code like line after line to add numbers. So if it ever seems to you like you're doing a lot of extra work for no reason, definitely please ask me, because there's usually a faster way to do things. It's just that there's so many tricks for using Java that I don't want to show them all to you all at once because you'd get overwhelmed. So you have to ask, and I'll tell you when you ask. But here is a shorter way to do it. It's one line. I'm creating a new array list of integer. You actually don't have to specify the integer here. That would be okay. But then instead of having an empty parameter here, I am running arrays.asList. And so you give it a list of values, and it will convert this actually into a list, which you then give as the input to your ArrayList constructor. Since I renamed this test list instead of nums, we got to fix that. But as you can see, now when I run it, it will work just fine. I hope this was helpful.